Welcome back to Sincerely Self Podcast. I'm very excited for our guest today and all the insight he's going to be able to share with us. We're joined by someone who's known as the Everyday Sales Leader. He is a dynamic self development coach, a sales consultant, and also the co host of the Everyday Leader podcast. We are joined by Drew Norton today. Drew, thank you for coming and joining us today.
Like Lexi, thank you for letting me join you and your listeners today. Excited to talk with you.
Yes, I'm so excited for this conversation. So, Drew, before we get started, for our listeners who may not be familiar with kind of what you do and where you're at right now, kind of give us a little overview of just what you've been up to and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so I'm a business coach and sales trainer. So I mostly work with I would say businesses that they want to grow out their sales team and their sales in general, but they want to do that through building a sales team. And I spent over a decade leading, selling, building teams myself, and decided, hey, I see a big need for this. I feel like there's a lot of great salespeople out there, and there's a lot of organizations that struggle to hire, recruit, attract, retain talent. And so that's one of the things I love to do is just help people grow their business through how do we build a foundation where we can attract talent in our organization. And I think secondarily, I think what I love helping business owners with is I feel like if there's not growth in your business, some of this could even apply to your personal life, but if there's not growth in your business, it usually comes down to one of two things. It's either leadership, like I've got to grow myself as a leader, I've got to grow the leaders on my team, or systems and processes. We've got some system, some process that needs to be improved or refined to be able to grow. So um, I did sales and led sales teams in a bunch of different organizations over the last almost 15 years, and about a year ago um, started started coaching and working with individuals and business owners who wanted to get to the next level themselves.
Yeah, I love that. How has it been kind of switching from being like leading a sales team or constantly like being involved in that world to kind of training others on entering that or just starting that?
Yeah, I've really loved it. It's been interesting because I went from there's been one or two times in my career where I've made a big shift or big change and kind of started over. And I could say is, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I felt like I was at the top and knew everything I was doing. And so even though I feel like I know what I'm doing when I come in and work with a business, I'm building my own business right now. I'm growing my own brand personally. And so that has been a fun and exciting challenge this last year to say, hey, I'm going to go build my own thing, uh, and still at the same time take the things I've learned and continue to teach others. So I enjoy that. I love sales, and I think I love the idea of helping someone realize your product or service is actually going to benefit them and help them work through maybe the limiting beliefs they have about why they shouldn't move forward or what holds them back. But I think more importantly, I love working with people and helping them, hey, realize they can do sales or they can be a bigger, bolder leader than maybe they've been in the past. And that's exciting to me. I love that and enjoy that.
Yeah, being able to open people's minds to the possibility of things that maybe they have kind of a limiting belief around, like, oh, I would never be able to lead a sales team, or I'd never be able to reach this amount of sales in this amount of time. And it really does come down to the belief on how you feel about yourself, really.
Yeah, totally.
And with sales, I think there's so many leadership mindsets and so many qualities that you learn about, and you tend to apply that primarily to your work, of course, and just the things that you're doing work based. But you had an experience with your wife and your 6 month old that kind of shifted how you viewed those qualities and how you felt like they kind of intertwined with life in general. So, kind of tell us about what happened.
Yeah, I like to say sales is life. I don't believe you can't improve in sales and not see it positively improve every other area of your life. And so, where I think that I can demonstrate that the most in my life is 5 or 6 years ago. I had made a change. Maybe it's been more than that now, almost 7 years. I made a change and walked away from a sales role I was in into a new sales position. And for the first time in it'd been quite a few years, I decided, hey, I want to level up and get a lot better. And even though I'd been in sales a long time up to this point, I felt like personally there'd been a part of me that was in a rut. I walked into something where it was, and I'd done this before, but it was 100% commission. It was door to door sales, and I'd done that previously. And so I just had made a bigger effort to like, hey, I'm going to make sure if I do this and my family makes this change that we're going to make it work. So I was working out of away from my home a couple hours away. We had an apartment. I typically work 5 or 6 days away from home. My wife and kids would often come spend time with me. And one day I'm driving home, well, driving back to our apartment. I called my wife and said, hey, when I get home, we'll head back to our house a couple hours away. And as I pulled into the apartments, I heard sirens behind me. And when I opened the door to the apartment, my wife was sitting over our 6 month old son on the floor. She was in tears. He was barely breathing. He was kind of wheezing a little bit. And it seemed like seconds. The paramedics rushed in behind me, loaded up my little boy and my wife, and rushed off to the hospital. And I was kind of left behind at the moment with our other kids. He it was really scary. He was spent the next few days in a hospital, ran a lot of tests, was initially misdiagnosed with a heart condition, and about 6 weeks later, we were told everything was fine and he's okay. There's nothing wrong with him. What had happened is he'd rolled over in a pack and play that my wife had. We knew he had a hernia at the time, and we think what happened is there was a broken slat we found in the pack and play, and we think his face got caught down and that he just couldn't roll over and that he was suffocating to death. It's a miracle he's alive. My wife, when she picked him up, he was limp and gray, wasn't breathing. She did CPR, saved his life. We don't have time to tell all the details of the story, but I could probably spend an hour talking about all the miracles that that were a part of this and that saved his life. And after that, though, my wife, like no mom should have to come in and find her 6 month old baby like that. And I'm just glad the story ended well for us. But she dealt with a lot of anxiety and stress and trauma from going through that event. And it was probably a year and a half to 2 years before she felt like she was back to normal. And through that time, through some therapy, through prayer, and a lot of conversations we had, I started to realize that I was helping her work through things and helping her talk through things and help her clarify things and help her. And the conversations we had were some of the best conversations we'd ever had up to that point in our marriage. And I realized that all the things I'd been studying and working on in sales the past few months were like helping me be a better communicator and a better husband to her, and helped her talk through and realize what she was dealing with and sort through things. And I believe at the time I thought I made that move for money and to make more, and now I believe that like I wasn't the husband she needed. Before that, I wasn't ready to be that for her, and I really believe that that happened, and I made that career change so that I could better serve her and help her through that time before my wife felt like she was back to normal. And she went through counseling. We There was a lot of prayer, and her and I had a lot of conversations where I realized I was doing a really good job of helping her kind of talk through things and sort through what she was feeling, and helping her repeat back and clarify and really help her kind of have some breakthroughs. And I kind of had this realization. I didn't recognize it at the moment. Well, some of it I recognized at the moment, and part of it was, hey, a lot of the things I've been learning in sales has actually helped me communicate with my wife way better than I would have previously. And so now I've come to believe that at the time I thought that was a move to a career change because God was going to help me make more money, or I was going to do bigger and better things. And now I believe like, hey, I wasn't the husband she needed prior to that. And that time I spent getting better at sales made me a better husband, made me a better father, made me a better communicator. And so I really don't believe you can improve at sales and not see it impact and help other areas of your life.
Yeah, it really does help you to manage those stressful situations where you think, I really don't know how I would have reacted or handled it well otherwise, because you're constantly trained to be able to react well under stress or under unpredictable situations. And I just want to say God's hand in all of that is so crazy and undeniable, really. Like you were saying, I'm sure there's so many details that you didn't have the time to share in this podcast. So for all of our listeners, I really encourage you to go. I'll link Drew's podcast and all of his socials so you're able to go and learn a little bit more about him and his wife and their family. But just seeing the way that God was able to kind of help your wife in that situation, help your child, and then overall help you guys be able to heal together.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it's interesting. There's a lot of people I talk to that they don't like sales or they don't want to admit they're in sales. And I used to be that person. I used to be, if you asked what I did for the first few years of my sales career, I'd tell you anything but that I was somebody doing sales.
Hmm.
And I really think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we view sales as a bad thing, or we view sales as something that's not helpful. Because if you've got a product or service that can bless and change somebody's life, like I believe you have a moral obligation to help somebody, like help somebody see that, help somebody to see how it's going to help them and what they're missing out on by not moving forward. And so that's one of the things I want to change is I want to change the way the world and people see sales, and that hey, you can actually, your ability to sell can actually have a huge impact on the lives of others. And if you're not in a direct sales role, it's like you're selling your kids when you try to get them to eat their broccoli at night. You're, if you're in a leadership role, you're selling your team on the vision of the team and the direction of the company and the way that you're going. And so whether you call that communication, negotiation, or something else, sales, I like to say sales is leadership. Sales is a form of leadership. And yeah, there's you can improve in sales and not see it bless other areas of your life.
Yeah, I love that you also said that sales is kind of viewed in almost like a pretty negative light by people who have never been in it or maybe just had like a negative experience trying out sales. Maybe they weren't in the right spot. And you really don't realize how many lives you can change until you do it or until you're changed by it yourself as a customer. And so, like you were saying, you're doing sales throughout almost every aspect of your life, whether you view it as that or not, and being able to have these leadership roles that you learn and these certain skills that you learn in a sales position, it really does change the way you interact with people or even view other people's interactions as well.
Yeah, I just think it's you're doing yourself a disservice if you feel bad that you're trying to sell somebody. And I think the only reason you wouldn't want to sell somebody is if it's not a good fit for them. And
Mhm.
if I recognize, hey, my product or service isn't for you, it should be okay to just say, hey, this isn't for you, and that's okay. And if it is, it's like I want to help you see why it would benefit you to move forward with it. And I think there's ways you can sell where you can come off natural, you can come off authentic, you don't have to resort to pressure or manipulation, and you can help them discover like, hey, if I don't make a change, I'm going to be stuck right where I'm at, or I'm not going to get the things I want. And you can do that in a way that works.
Yeah, because I feel like success in sales is the highest when you are authentic and when you really are trying to benefit someone else. So recognizing, hey, maybe my product isn't the best for this person. What would you say? Like, what advice would you give to sales reps that maybe run into that situation and their ego kind of wants to put more pressure on the situation to get the sale?
Yeah, so I like to view sales as like the art of guiding someone through a process of discovery, where they recognize an urgent need for change. And so I used to believe that sales was about if I can tell them all the reasons my product or service makes sense, and then if I have a really good closing line at the end, like they'll sign up or they'll work with me. What I've come to believe Now, and this, there might be some differences based on what your product or service is or the industry you're in. But for the most part, I've found that your sale actually happens in discovery. That when you're, and I used to believe that discovery was about me learning something about you so I could use one of the arrows in my quiver later to get you to buy. What I've really come to learn true discovery is helping someone recognize, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what's working. This isn't what's working. This is the consequences if I don't change things. If I don't move forward, here's where I'm at. And it's just way more powerful. I've sold things to people where I've talked them into things. And no
Hmm.
one wants to be talked into something. And those are usually the ones that cancel, or the ones that are least satisfied or unhappy. But if someone feels like it's their choice, their decision, and they made a realization that, oh, I need this, like this is going to help me, it's way more powerful than anything you could say to them. And you get there through asking good questions. If you can ask good questions, get them to recognize some things, sometimes people will talk themselves into something, and makes it very easy when when
Yeah.
when you help them discover why they need it.
Exactly. It's just putting the least amount of worrying about the outcome into the situation and just focusing on where you're at, what you guys are talking about, and the moment instead of worrying about the outcome.
Yeah, totally.
So, what would you say are some of the top kind of leadership roles that you've learned in sales and from running sales teams that you've seen and been able to apply in just your everyday life?
A couple things I'll say on that. One, just because you're good at sales doesn't make you a good leader. A lot of times I see organizations put someone in a role because they're good at sales. I do think though, to be a good leader, it helps to be good at sales. But they don't necessarily translate both ways. And when I think about the best leaders I've had, they've been ones who've supported me, they've shown up for me, they've challenged me. So they haven't just given me the support I need, but they've also hold me accountable, or they they encourage me to go for bigger things, or they tell me to step up when I'm maybe not. And um, I on our podcast we talk about leadership a lot, and we often ask our guests how they define leadership. And lately, the answer we've been getting quite a bit from our guests on our show is that leadership is influence, which John Maxwell talks a lot about. And so when I think of the good leaders in sales or in just other organizations I've been a part of, whether that's been church or community or whatever, they're able to influence others, and they're able to inspire others, and help them see a bigger vision for themselves of what they can achieve.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like leadership is such a person-based definition. You know what I mean? People will define leadership on how they've seen it in their lives or how they've seen it from the people that they look up to or their mentors. And I think anyone would say that the best type of leaders are the ones who not only help you learn from everything that you're doing, but they also are continuing to learn. Like the best leader is someone who doesn't think that they know everything. They're
Right.
still open to learning and they still believe that they are learning. And so I love that you were saying that the best leader is someone that, helps you see things in yourself. And I think it's someone that does that same thing for themselves as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and sometimes those leaders have been the ones who've been somewhere where I want to go, and sometimes they haven't been where I want to go, but they're able to like get me to see something I wasn't able to see previously. And so
Yeah.
I think sometimes the leader, and depending on what the organization is or what it is, sometimes you want to follow someone who's been there before. And I think they don't always have to do that. Sometimes they can just be the one that helps you look at things in a way you've never thought about before, or see yourself differently, believe in yourself more.
Yeah. So I have a lot of audience members who are either looking into starting a business or they are just starting a business. What advice would you give them on how to implement leadership roles in with their staff and just how to implement that at the very beginning of a business?
Yeah, if you're new and starting out, you're one, I would say you are in sales because you're going to have to sell your business.
Hmm.
And two, I think it's important that you take on that role as long as you can. Um, I think when you start to make those first hires, I really love um, Dan Martell has an amazing book called Buy Back Your Time. And I think if you're a new business owner and you're looking to build a business, that's a great book to read. He talks about your first hires are to hire people that take off the parts of the business that you don't enjoy doing or that don't make you a lot as much money. And because as a business owner, your focus should be on, okay, what are the things that make me the most money, or what are the things I enjoy the most, and keep your focus on those things. And a lot of times I think business owners, they don't know what to hire, so they just hire a random person, and it may not be the best thing. And so with sales teams especially, sometimes it makes more sense if you're the business owner to hire someone to kind of handle your operations while you continue sales. And you sometimes hiring a salesperson actually isn't your first hire. Sometimes you need to be in that role a little bit longer. But I think it's just getting really clear on, hey, what's the purpose, what's the mission of the business, and then what is it that I want, and then making priorities around what you're trying to build the how do you want the business to line up with your life. If you're new to starting a business, the first few hires are some of the most important ones you make. And so I think it's, hey, where can I save myself time and energy, hire that out first, and focus on the things that are making you the most money in your business.
Yes, absolutely. Drew, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we could probably talk about all of these sales topics for hours, but I will send all of you over to Drew's podcast. Like he said, they talk about leadership all the time. So if this is a topic that you're trying to learn more about, or you're trying to implement in your business or your sales role, whatever it may be, I really tell you guys to go over to his podcast. I'll have it linked in the description, as well as his socials, so that you guys can go check it out. So thank you, Drew, for joining us today.
Yeah, and for your listener, if any of them are building out their sales team, I have an assessment and a guide they can get by texting quiz to 928-928-5985. So that's 928-928-5985. And if you just text quiz, you can have an assessment that tells you where you're at, and kind of gives you some advice on, hey, what are next steps to take in building my sales team.
I love that. Me and Drew talked a little bit about this before we started recording about this assessment. And like he was saying, I feel like it's a really good tool to use in your business, especially if you've kind of maybe hit a plateau and you're like, what next steps do I need to make? It's kind of a good guiding tool to kind of show you where maybe you need to focus on.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Lexi. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yes, thank you, Drew. And I will see you guys next week.